Elias had always been a quiet man, the type who kept his thoughts tucked inside like folded letters no one ever opened. He lived alone on a small piece of land far from the town, spending most of his days tending to cattle, mending fences, and talking only to the wind and the animals around him. People in town knew him, but only in the way one knows a distant mountain visible, familiar, but never truly explored. Many believed he preferred loneliness, but the truth was much simpler. He had never learned how to ask for company. One early morning, when the sun was still low and the air smelled of fresh grass, Elias saddled his horse and decided to ride along the old western trail. He had taken this path many times before, but that day he felt an unusual pull toward it, as if something unseen had whispered that the road had a story waiting. He clicked his tongue, and the horse began its slow, steady journey across the open land. The trail was peaceful, lined with tall wildflowers swaying in the soft wind. Birds hopped between branches, and long stretches of open fields made the world feel endless. Elias breathed deeply, enjoying the rare moment of calm. For once, he wasn't thinking about repairs, bills, or endless chores. He simply rode, letting the earth move gently beneath him. About halfway down the trail, he noticed something unusual, a thin column of smoke rising far in the distance, near a patch of land most people avoided. That property belonged to Marina, the widow people in town often spoke of with both admiration and nervousness. She was known as a giant girl, not in a cruel way, but simply because she was taller and stronger than most women, and even some men. Her late husband had been a large man too, and together they had worked one of the toughest ranches in the region. But after his passing, Marina lived alone, managing everything herself. Some admired her strength, while others kept their distance, unsure how to approach someone who carried herself with such firmness. Elias had never spoken to her before. He had seen her only once. From far away, guiding her cattle during a storm, the image remained in his memory like a painting. Her tall figure against the dark sky, fighting the wind with determination. She was someone he respected without even knowing. As he approached the border of her property, Elias heard something strange, an echoing thud, followed by a frustrated groan. He pulled his horse to a stop. The sound came again, louder this time, mixed with splashing water and muttered words. Someone was clearly in trouble. He hesitated. This wasn't his land, and he didn't want to intrude. But the tone of the voice worried, irritated, and tired made him realize whoever it was needed help. Elias nudged his horse forward and followed the sound until he reached a clearing near an old stone well. The structure looked both ancient and tired, leaning slightly to one side. There, next to the well, struggling with a broken water bucket, was Marina. She was splattered from head to toe in wet mud. Her work shirt and pants had absorbed so much water that they clung unevenly to her, making her look like she had lost half her clothing, even though she actually hadn't. The mud had torn parts of her outer layer, leaving patches that made her situation appear far worse. Her hair, normally tied neatly in a braid, hung loose and tangled around her face. She was trying to lift a bucket filled with muddy water, but every time she pulled it, the handle slipped, splashing more dirt on her. Elias froze. He hadn't expected to see her like this, not Marina, the strong widow everyone spoke about with respect. She looked nothing like the woman in the stories. She looked tired, human, and caught in a deeply embarrassing moment. Before he could turn away to give her privacy, Marina spotted him. Her eyes widened in shock. She straightened immediately, slipping on the muddy ground and almost falling again. She quickly grabbed her torn outer shirt and pulled it around herself, her cheeks turning red beneath the dirt. You caught me like this?" she exclaimed, her voice cracking between embarrassment and frustration. "Don't you know people could misunderstand?" Elias felt heat rise to his own face. He wasn't sure if he should apologize, walk away, or pretend he hadn't seen anything at all. His mind scrambled for words that refused to come. I heard someone struggling," he managed softly. "I just wanted to help. I didn't mean to see anything." Marina pressed a hand to her forehead, clearly overwhelmed by the situation. She took a breath and tried to calm herself. The wind blew softly, moving her wet clothes and making her shiver slightly. Elias noticed and instinctively reached for the blanket tied behind his saddle. He carefully stepped off his horse, making sure to move slowly so she didn't feel threatened or uncomfortable. He approached just close enough to offer the blanket without stepping too far into her space. "You can use this," he said gently. Marina looked at the blanket, then at Elias, and for the first time, her expression softened not with embarrassment but with a quiet gratitude. "Thank you," she murmured, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. Silence hung between them, thick and awkward, but strangely not unpleasant. Elias glanced at the broken bucket and the muddy mess around the well. It was clear she had been struggling for a long time. He knew how heavy water could get, especially when mixed with dirt. Even someone as strong as Marina couldn't handle everything alone. "Do you need help fixing this?" he asked. Marina hesitated. Pride flickered in her eyes, the kind people build when life teaches them to carry burdens without asking for assistance. But then she sighed. A tired, honest sigh. "Yes," she admitted quietly. "I've been trying to fix it all morning, but everything keeps going wrong." Elias nodded and set to work without further words. He examined the bucket's handle, the ropes, and the pulley system. The old wooden beam above the well had rotted in several places, making it dangerous to lift anything heavy. Marina watched him silently, still wrapped in the blanket, a hint of curiosity forming in her expression. Most people were afraid to step onto her land, yet this cowboy had not only come, but offered help without hesitation. As Elias worked, he tried to make light conversation to ease her embarrassment. "So, the mud gave you a tough time today?" Marina let out a short, breathy laugh. "The mud, the bucket, the rope, basically everything." Elias smiled softly. It was nice hearing her laugh, even if it was tired. Little by little, the uncomfortable tension faded. Once he repaired the pulley and reinforced the beam with a spare wooden piece lying nearby, he pulled the bucket up smoothly. Clean water glistened in the sunlight. Marina stepped forward, amazed. "I've been trying to fix this for days," she said. "How did you do it so quickly?" Elias shrugged modestly. "I've fixed a lot of broken things on the ranch. You learn after a while." Marina stared at him, her expression shifting between relief and something else, something thoughtful. She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders and lowered her gaze. "I'm sorry for shouting earlier," she said quietly. "I was embarrassed. I didn't expect anyone to see me like that." "It's all right," Elias replied. Anyone would have reacted the same. She looked up, studying his gentle expression. Something inside her relaxed. She wasn't used to help, and even less used to kindness without conditions. "Thank you. Truly," she said. Elias nodded and mounted his horse, but before he could ride away, Marina called out softly, almost hesitantly. "Elias, will you come back tomorrow? I still have repairs to finish, and, well, I'd appreciate the help." It was the first time someone had spoken his name with such warmth. He paused, meeting her eyes. "Yes," he said simply. "I'll be here." As he rode away, the strange feeling that had pulled him onto the trail earlier returned, stronger now. Something had changed. Not just a meeting between two lonely people, but the beginning of a story neither of them had expected. And Marina, still holding the blanket, watched him disappear down the trail with a look that held more hope than embarrassment now, hope that maybe, for the first time since her husband's passing, she wasn't entirely alone anymore. The next morning arrived with a soft golden light spreading across the land. Elias woke up earlier than usual, feeling a strange pull in his chest. He told himself he was only going to help with repairs, nothing more. But even so, he found himself brushing down his horse more carefully, checking his tools twice, and making sure everything was clean and in good shape. He wasn't trying to impress anyone, at least that's what he kept telling himself, but a part of him felt a quiet warmth he hadn't felt in years. When he reached Marina's ranch, he noticed she was already outside, sweeping dried mud from the ground near the well. She looked different today, still tall and strong, but calmer, steadier, as if the embarrassment of yesterday had faded into something easier to carry. When she saw Elias approaching, A faint smile tugged at her lips. It wasn't wide or obvious, but it was real. "You came back?" she said softly. "I said I would," Elias replied, dismounting his horse. They shared a small silence, the kind that felt surprisingly comfortable. Elias began unloading his tools, and Marina guided him toward a broken section of fencing. They worked together in a peaceful rhythm. Marina held the wooden boards in place while Elias hammered them securely. Every now and then, she would glance at him, noticing the focus in his eyes, the steady movement of his hands. He wasn't loud or flashy, just quietly dependable. Elias, on the other hand, found himself admiring her strength. Even after so much hardship, she stood firm, never complaining, never running away from work. She handled heavy boards as if they were nothing, but beneath her strong movements, he noticed something softer, something she rarely let others see. As the sun climbed higher, the morning peace was suddenly broken by the distant sound of voices, loud, excited voices coming from the road. Both of them paused, listening carefully. "It sounds like people from town," Marina said, her brows tightening. The voices grew closer. Elias heard laughter, whispering, and the unmistakable tone of gossip, sharp, eager, and not especially kind. A moment later, 3 townspeople appeared along the path, walking slowly as if they were taking in every detail of the ranch. When they spotted Elias and Marina standing near the fence, their faces lit up with a spark of curiosity. "Well, look at that," one woman whispered loudly enough for both of them to hear. "I told you something was going on here." Marina stiffened, her jaw tightening. Elias felt an uncomfortable twist in his stomach. He had never liked gossip, and he certainly didn't want to be part of one now. The trio approached casually, pretending they were just passing through. "Morning, Marina," one of the men greeted with an overly friendly smile. "We didn't expect to find you busy so early." Marina forced a polite smile. "Just fixing fences. And with company too," the other woman added, staring at Elias with raised eyebrows. "Seems like quite a story." Elias felt heat rise to his face, but before he could speak, Marina stepped slightly in front of him as if protecting him from their assumptions. "It's not what you think," she said firmly. "He's only helping with repairs." "Oh, of course," the woman replied in a tone that clearly didn't believe her. "Just helping. Near the old well yesterday too. Right? We heard you were in an unusual state." Marina's face flushed. Elias instantly understood that word had already spread. People had seen him ride onto her land. Someone must have passed by, seen Marina, covered in mud, and jumped to their own incorrect conclusion. "We should go," Elias murmured to Marina. "We don't have to." "No," she said quietly, her voice trembling with both embarrassment and frustration. "They'll twist things more if we back away." The 3 onlookers exchanged glances, whispering just loud enough for them to hear phrases like "unexpected romance" and "strange timing." At last, after lingering far too long, the group continued down the trail. Their voices faded slowly, but the damage was already done. Marina let out a long breath once they were out of sight, her shoulders sagging slightly. "They're going to carry this back to town," she said in a low tone. "By afternoon, the story will be completely different." Elias looked at her with concern. "We didn't do anything wrong." "That doesn't matter," she replied softly. "People believe what they want to believe." She turned away, gripping the wooden fence to steady herself. Elias could see the worry etched deeply into her face. She wasn't afraid of hard work, storms, or loneliness, but she feared judgment, whispers, and disrespect toward her late husband's name. He had been a good man, and she carried that memory like a responsibility. Elias stepped closer, speaking gently. "Tell me what's on your mind." Marina hesitated, then met his eyes with a mixture of anxiety and determination. "Yesterday you saw me in a moment I didn't expect anyone to see," she began. "And now people are letting their imagination create stories that never happened. I don't want trouble for myself. Or for you." Elias shook his head. "It doesn't bother me what people say. It bothers me," she said firmly. "People talk about my husband, my life, my choices. I'm tired of being a topic instead of a person. She paced a few steps, gathering her thoughts. Elias waited patiently, knowing she was trying to find the right words. Listen, she said finally, stopping in front of him. I need to protect my reputation. Not because I care about gossip, but because it affects everything. My work, my peace, the way people treat me. Elias nodded slowly. He understood more than she realized. In small towns, stories became truths simply because enough people repeated them. Marina took a deep breath, a long, steadying breath as if she was about to do something difficult. Elias, she began carefully, I need to give you two choices. His heart skipped. The seriousness in her voice felt heavy. First, she said, you can help me clear this misunderstanding in town. Stand with me. Explain things so people stop creating stories. She paused, looking down briefly, then lifting her gaze again. Or second, you can agree to a symbolic promise. Something old ranch families used to do whenever gossip threatened their dignity. Elias said nothing yet. He waited for her to continue, sensing how important this moment was. It's not marriage, she clarified quickly, her cheeks warming. Not really. It's a traditional understanding. Two people agreeing to support each other publicly until the dust settles. It's like a promise of companionship. Nothing more. She swallowed hard, watching him closely. I know these choices sound sudden, she said softly, but I can't face another wave of rumors alone. I can't let people twist yesterday into something shameful. Elias looked at her with gentle understanding. He could see the weight she carried not just of yesterday's embarrassment, but of years of being judged, misunderstood, or pitied. I'll help, he said quietly. Marina blinked. Help how? Whichever way you need, he replied sincerely. I won't walk away from you. A long silence followed. Marina seemed touched, almost surprised. She had expected hesitation, confusion, maybe even refusal. Instead, Elias stood there with steady eyes and calm confidence. You don't have to decide right now, he added. We can talk through it. Marina nodded slowly, her eyes softening. Thank you. I didn't expect you to accept so easily. It's simple, Elias said gently. You needed help. I'm here. Something in her expression melted at those words. She wasn't used to anyone choosing to stay not out of duty but out of kindness. For the rest of the afternoon, they continued working together, the earlier tension slowly fading. But the air between them had changed. Something unspoken now connected them, a shared problem, a shared worry, and maybe a shared beginning. When Elias finally rode home, the sky was filled with warm evening colors. He felt thoughtful, but not troubled. He knew things were about to become complicated in town, but he also knew one thing for certain. He was ready to stand by Marina, and for the first time in a long time, Marina watched someone leave her land with a look of trust instead of loneliness. The next few days moved slowly but meaningfully for both Elias and Marina. After giving him those two choices, Marina expected Elias to distance himself or come back with hesitation. But he didn't. Instead, he arrived the very next morning with his horse, his tools, and a quiet smile that told her he was ready to help. This simple act, showing up without excuses, touched her more than she let on. On the third day, she invited him to have tea before they began the chores. He sat on the wooden bench outside her house while she brought out two steaming cups. They didn't talk much at first. They didn't need to. The silence between them felt natural, like the soft wind that brushed past them. After a while, Elias looked around the ranch with thoughtful eyes. You manage this whole place alone? He asked. Marina nodded. I've been doing it since my husband died. It's not easy, but I do what I can. Elias knew that doing what I can meant working late nights, lifting heavy equipment, facing storms alone, and making hard decisions day after day. He admired her strength even more. As the days passed, they fell into a routine. They fixed broken fences. They cleaned the old tool shed. They inspected the roof for loose shingles. Every chore brought them closer, not because of romance, but because of trust. One afternoon, they were repairing the cattle gate when Elias noticed a pile of unused lumber leaning dangerously to the side. Before Marina could lift it, he stepped forward and took the heavier planks himself. "You don't have to do everything alone anymore," he said softly. Marina paused, watching him. She had heard those words before in her life, but rarely from someone who actually meant them. Elias wasn't the kind of man who spoke to impress. He spoke only when he had something sincere to say. "Thank you," she replied, her tone quieter than usual. While they worked, people from town continued whispering. Some would pass by on horses or wagons, slowing down just enough to stare. A few would stop to ask unnecessary questions, pretending to be concerned but actually curious about the unusual partnership forming between the widow and the quiet cowboy. Whenever she heard them talking, Marina felt tension rise in her shoulders. She didn't want Elias to suffer because of her reputation, but every time she looked at him, he seemed unbothered, focused only on the task at hand. He was steady, a calm presence she didn't know she needed. One late morning, after fixing a broken water trough, Marina wiped sweat from her forehead and leaned against a fence post. Elias handed her a bottle of water and took a seat on the ground nearby. "Do you ever get tired?" he asked. "Every day," she admitted with a faint smile. "But I can't stop. The ranch won't run itself." Elias nodded knowingly. He understood the feeling. Hard work had shaped both of their lives. For a moment, they simply looked out across the ranch. Tall grass moved gently in the wind. The cattle grazed peacefully. The sun shone bright but not harsh. "It's beautiful here," Elias said. Marina's expression softened. "Not many people say that. They probably never take the time to see it," he replied. His words reached her in a way no compliment ever had. She looked at him, realizing how deeply observant he was. He noticed small details. He appreciated things others ignored. As the days blended together, their teamwork strengthened. Elias learned her patterns, how she liked to arrange tools, how she organized feed, how she managed cattle. Marina learned his rhythms, how he preferred to fix things, how he stayed quiet when thinking, how he smiled when her jokes caught him off guard. The quiet cowboy and the tall widow slowly began to move in harmony, almost without realizing it. One evening, after finishing a particularly long day of repairing the barn roof, Marina invited Elias to have dinner. It wasn't planned, just a simple meal she had cooked earlier. They sat at the small wooden table inside her warm kitchen. The lamp above them cast a soft light across the room. The air smelled of baked bread and herbs. "You really didn't need to come back every day," Marina said as she served him a bowl. Elias shook his head. "I wanted to." Those 3 words sent a small, unexpected warmth through her chest. She watched him for a moment. His calm face, his steady hands, his quiet way of showing care. She realized something important. He wasn't helping out of pity. He was helping out of choice. After dinner, they stepped outside to breathe the cool night air. The sky above them was filled with stars, stretching from one end of the horizon to the other. "Do you think the gossip will stop?" Elias asked gently. "Maybe," she said. "But some people like talking more than listening." Elias crossed his arms. "Then let them talk. We don't owe them anything." Marina smiled faintly. "You speak like it doesn't bother you." "It doesn't," he replied. "I know the truth. You know the truth. That's enough for me." His confidence surprised her. She had been carrying the pressure of other people's opinions for years. To hear someone dismiss them so easily made her wonder why she hadn't learned to do the same. But their peace would not last long. 3 days later, they went into town together to buy supplies: wood, nails, and rope. The moment they walked into the general store, conversations stopped. People stared openly, some pretending to browse, others whispering behind shelves. Marina lifted her chin. Elias walked beside her, calm and silent. When they reached the counter, the shopkeeper, Mr. Fenton, cleared his throat awkwardly. "Morning, Marina." "Morning, Elias," he said, avoiding eye contact. "Morning," Elias replied. "So," Mr. Fenton said, twisting his mustache, "I've been hearing some things about the two of you." Marina stiffened. Elias glanced at her before answering. Rumors, he said simply. Nothing more. The shopkeeper nodded uncertainly. Well, people like to talk. You know how it is. Yes, Marina said firmly. I know exactly how it is. There was strength in her voice. Elias felt proud of her for speaking up without anger or fear. On the way back to the ranch, Marina took a slow breath. This can't go on, she said. If people keep misunderstanding, it will affect everything: my business, your peace, even the ranch's reputation. Elias looked at her carefully. He knew this moment was coming. You want to make a decision, he said. Marina nodded. Yes, but it's not just about me anymore. It involves you too. She slowed her steps and faced him fully. Elias, you told me you were willing to help however I needed. I hope you meant that. I did, he said softly. Her voice dropped to a gentle, honest tone. Then I need us to stand together in front of the town. Not to pretend anything, not to agree to anything permanent. Just to show them we are united in truth. I want their gossip to stop. I want their respect back. Elias considered her words. His answer came naturally. I'll stand with you, he said. You won't face them alone. Marina's eyes softened. She took a slow, relieved breath. Thank you, she whispered. I didn't realize how much I needed someone until you showed up that day at the well. And I didn't realize how much I needed company, Elias replied quietly, until I met you. They continued walking, the distance between them smaller than ever before. Over the next week, they prepared. They spoke openly about what happened at the well. They shared their concerns. They discussed how to face the town in a calm, united way. And during those days, something gentle, steady, and unexpected grew between them. Not romance, not promises, just a deep companionship formed by honesty, courage, and trust. It was the beginning of something real, something neither of them had been searching for but found anyway. And both knew that facing the town together would change everything. The months that followed became a true test of patience, courage, and quiet faith for him. Even though life started to settle down on the outside, his heart still carried the weight of many memories, both good and painful. He tried his best to appear strong in front of his family, his friends, and the people who trusted him. But deep inside, he knew he was fighting a silent battle, a battle that only he could understand. He woke up each morning with the hope that today would feel different. Sometimes it did. Sometimes he felt lighter, as if the world had decided to give him a small break. Other days, even the simplest tasks felt heavy, and he had to remind himself to breathe, to move, to keep going. It was during these difficult mornings that he realized how strong a person becomes when they have no other choice but to continue. Slowly, he began building a new routine for himself. He started spending more time outdoors, walking in open spaces where the air felt fresh and the sky looked wide and peaceful. These walks became his private escape, a place where he could think, reflect, and rebuild his inner world without feeling rushed. On many days, he found himself talking to his own thoughts, asking questions, and slowly finding answers. It was not a sudden transformation but a gradual healing, like a wound closing from the inside. His family noticed small changes in him. They saw that he smiled more often, even if the smile was gentle and quiet. They saw that he was trying, and this simple effort was enough for them. They did not push him or question him too much. Instead, they supported him in small, steady ways. A cup of tea placed quietly near him, a kind sentence from his mother, a simple gesture from his siblings. These little things acted like soft lights guiding him through his darker days. During this time, he also began focusing more on his goals. He had dreams that he had kept aside for too long. Now, he decided it was time to bring them back into his life. He made a plan, step by step, writing everything down in a notebook, something he used to avoid before. He wanted clarity. He wanted direction. And slowly, he started working on each point, never rushing, but never stopping either. There were moments when he felt tired and questioned whether he was strong enough to rebuild everything. But every time these doubts appeared, He reminded himself of how far he had already come. He knew that strength does not come from winning every battle. It comes from refusing to give up after losing one. This understanding became his silent motivation. As he worked toward his goals, he met new people, some through his work, some casually, and some unexpectedly. These new faces brought new energy into his life. They did not know his past, and that made it easier for him. With them, he felt like a person who could start fresh without being judged or misunderstood. He enjoyed simple conversations, shared small jokes, and began feeling the warmth of new friendships forming around him. Even though he was moving forward, he still carried memories of his past inside him. Not because he wanted to hold on to pain, but because those memories had shaped him. They taught him lessons about trust, patience, forgiveness, and the value of inner peace. With time, he learned to look at his past with calmness rather than regret. He realized that not every story ends the way we expect, but every story leaves behind something useful. One evening, while sitting alone on his rooftop, he looked at the sky and felt something different, a sense of calm that he had not felt in a long time. The air was cool, the stars were clear, and the city around him was quiet. In that peaceful moment, he felt grateful. Not because his life had become perfect, but because he had survived the difficult parts and came out stronger. He understood that true strength is not loud. It is soft, steady, and patient. With every passing week, he became more focused and confident. He started working harder, improving his skills, and learning new things. His dedication began to show results. People appreciated his efforts, and opportunities slowly started to open up. He no longer felt like life was pushing him down. Instead, he felt like he was finally walking on a path that belonged to him. He also learned the importance of boundaries. He realized that not everyone deserves access to his emotions or his time. He became more selective about the people he allowed into his inner circle. This did not make him cold or distant. It simply helped him protect his peace. He no longer tolerated negativity or disrespect. He wanted a life filled with genuine people, warm conversations, and meaningful connections. Nothing less. As months passed, he began noticing how different he felt from the person he used to be. He was calmer, wiser, and more aware of his own worth. He learned how to listen to his heart without letting emotions overpower his decisions. He learned to let go gracefully instead of holding on to things that were not meant for him. He learned to trust the timing of life, understanding that everything comes when it is supposed to, not when we wish for it. One of the biggest changes he experienced was learning to enjoy his own company. He no longer felt lonely when alone. Instead, he used this time to think, write, plan, and dream. He realized that being alone does not mean being empty. Sometimes it means being full of self-awareness. This new comfort with solitude made him stronger, independent, and more confident in his decisions. One day, he received an opportunity that he had once only dreamed about. Something he thought was too far from his reach now stood right in front of him. He felt excited but also calm. He knew he was ready. He accepted it with a grateful heart and promised himself that he would give his best, not for anyone else but for his own future. As he moved forward with this opportunity, he found himself surrounded by supportive people who appreciated his dedication and sincerity. They did not know his past struggles, but they respected the person he had become. This helped him grow even more. For the first time in a long while, he felt proud of himself not because life was easy, but because he kept moving even when it was hard. With new responsibilities came new experiences. He traveled to places he had never seen before, learned skills he never thought he would need, and experienced moments that filled his heart with joy and satisfaction. These experiences helped him feel alive again. They reminded him that life still had many beautiful surprises waiting for him. He slowly began to trust life again, not blindly, but wisely. He knew that pain is part of the journey, but so is happiness. He knew that some people leave, but better people arrive. He knew that loss teaches, but time heals. This understanding made him emotionally stronger than ever. By the end of the year, he realized he had transformed in ways he had never expected. He was no longer the same person who once felt broken and confused. He was someone new, someone stronger, softer, calmer, and more hopeful. His story was not a story of sadness. It was a story of rising, learning, and rebuilding. He looked at himself in the mirror one day and smiled gently. Not because everything was perfect, but because he finally understood that everything would be okay. He learned that life does not always go as planned, but it always gives another chance. He learned that every ending is not a loss. Sometimes it is the beginning of something much better. And as he stood there, smiling at his own reflection, he felt something he had been waiting to feel for a long time, a deep, quiet peace in his heart, a peace that came from growth, acceptance, and strength, a peace that came from knowing that his story was still unfolding, and the best chapters were yet to come.